Have you ever felt like there's something holding you back? Like an invisible force controlling your thoughts, emotions, and even your actions? What if I told you that force is your own ego, and it's playing its most deceptive trick right now? Stick with me, because by the end of this video, you'll uncover the ego's ultimate illusion, and the one secret that can finally set you free. Section 1. What is the ego? The ego is not who you are. It's merely a mental construct, a collection of beliefs, memories, and ideas you've accumulated over time, which now dictate how you perceive yourself and the world. This self-image is shaped by childhood experiences, societal expectations, and personal achievements or failures. You might think of the ego as the voice in your head that says, "I need to prove myself. I am not good enough," or even, "I'm better than them." But here's the paradox. The ego doesn't really exist. It's a mental fabrication, a phantom that thrives on illusion. Think about how you've identified yourself over the years. Maybe you've thought, "I'm a doctor, I'm a parent, or I'm a failure." These are labels, not your essence. The ego clings to these labels because without them, it doesn't know how to define itself. The ego is also a master of comparison. It constantly pits you against others, convincing you that your worth depends on how you measure up. This creates a cycle of insecurity and superiority, feeling either less than or better than others. In both cases, the ego wins because it keeps you trapped in its narrative. So how do you begin to detach from the ego? Start by observing it. Notice when it flares up, when you feel judged, when you crave approval, or when you criticize others. The moment you recognize the ego at play, you weaken its power. Awareness is the first step toward breaking free from its grip. Section 2. How the ego creates illusions. The ego's survival depends on illusions, stories it tells to keep you tethered to a false sense of self. One of its favorite illusions is that your worth is tied to external factors like money, success, relationships, or physical appearance. These illusions make you chase things outside yourself, believing they will bring happiness. For example, think about how society glorifies wealth and status. The ego whispers, "If I had a bigger house or a better job, then I'd be happy." But how many times have you achieved something, only to feel empty soon after? That's the ego's trick. It keeps moving the goalpost, ensuring you never feel truly satisfied. The ego also uses fear to create illusions. It magnifies your insecurities, making you afraid to fail, to be rejected, or to step outside your comfort zone. Have you ever wanted to try something new but thought, "What if I'm not good enough?" That's the ego keeping you small, protecting its fragile sense of self. To break free, challenge these illusions. Ask yourself, is this story true? Who would I be without this belief? These questions disrupt the ego's narrative, revealing a deeper truth. Your worth is intrinsic. It's not something you earn, it's something you already have. Section 3. The ego's need for control. The ego craves control like a starving man craves food. It wants to dominate every aspect of your life, dictating how you think, act, and feel. This need for control stems from fear of uncertainty, failure, and vulnerability. The ego equates control with safety, convincing you that if you can just manage everything perfectly, you'll avoid pain. But control is an illusion. Life is inherently unpredictable, and no amount of planning or micromanaging can change that. The ego, however, refuses to accept this truth. It keeps you stuck in a loop of overthinking and perfectionism, draining your energy and joy. Think about a time when you tried to control a situation, only to have it spiral out of your hands. Maybe you meticulously planned an event, only for things to go wrong. The frustration you felt wasn't from the situation itself, it was from the ego's refusal to let go. True freedom comes when you surrender control. This doesn't mean giving up. It means trusting the flow of life. Instead of resisting what is, you accept it and adapt. Practices like mindfulness and meditation can help you cultivate this trust, quieting the ego's frantic need for control. Section 4. How the ego manipulates your emotions. Emotions are the ego's playground. It knows how to push your buttons, amplifying feelings like anger, jealousy, and fear to keep you reactive and distracted. Why? Because when you're caught up in your emotions, you're less likely to question the ego's motives. Take anger, for example. The ego loves to fuel grudges, replaying past injustices in your mind. It tells you, they were wrong and you're right, stoking the flames of resentment. But what does holding on to anger achieve? It doesn't hurt the other person, it only poisons your own peace. Jealousy is another emotion the ego exploits. It compares your life to others, making you feel inadequate. Social media is a breeding ground for this. Endless highlights of other people's successes feed the ego's narrative that you're falling behind. The key to disarming the ego is awareness. When a strong emotion arises, pause and observe it. Ask yourself, where is this coming from? Is it the ego speaking? By creating space between the emotion and your reaction, you regain control. Over time, this practice weakens the ego's hold on your emotional state. Section 5. The ego's final trick, separation. The ego's ultimate deception is the illusion of separation. It convinces you that you are isolated from others, from nature, and even from your own inner self. This illusion fuels loneliness, competition, and a constant sense of lack. The ego thrives on me versus them thinking. It creates divisions based on race, religion, gender, and social status, perpetuating conflict and misunderstanding. But here's the truth. These divisions are artificial. At our core, we are all connected. Imagine standing in front of a mirror. The ego tells you that the reflection is separate from you, but in reality, it's just a different perspective of the same being. Similarly, the boundaries the ego creates between you and others are illusions. When you dissolve these boundaries, you experience a sense of unity, a state of peace and wholeness that transcends the ego's grasp. How do you overcome the illusion of separation? Start by practicing empathy. Recognize yourself in others. Their fears, hopes, and struggles are not so different from your own. Meditation and mindfulness can also help you reconnect with your true self, the part of you that exists beyond the ego's illusions. Section 6. The ego and its attachment to labels. The ego thrives on labels because they give it a sense of identity. These labels are often how we define ourselves to the world, creating a sense of stability and security. Whether it's successful, smart, failure, parent, or artist, these labels act as the ego's anchors. Without them, the ego feels adrift, as though it might lose its existence entirely. But what happens when we over-identify with these labels? When you let the ego attach itself to labels, you risk becoming confined by them. For example, if you see yourself as successful, your ego begins to depend on achievements to maintain that identity. The moment you encounter a setback or failure, the entire foundation crumbles, leaving you in emotional turmoil. Similarly, if you carry the label of failure, the ego convinces you that no matter how hard you try, you're destined to fail. This attachment to labels can limit your growth. You may avoid trying new things or stepping outside your comfort zone because of the fear that it might contradict your label. A successful person might avoid risks for fear of failure, while a failure might not even try, believing the effort to be futile. The ego traps you in these roles, preventing you from exploring the full spectrum of who you truly are. Breaking free requires shifting your mindset. Instead of rigidly identifying as successful or failure, see these labels as temporary roles you experience. For instance, instead of saying, "I am a failure," say, "I am experiencing failure at the moment." This subtle shift reminds you that life is dynamic and constantly changing. You are not bound by any one label. Practices like journaling can be incredibly effective for examining your attachment to labels. Write down the labels you've used to define yourself and question their validity. Are they truly who you are, or are they just roles you've played? Meditation can also help you detach from these labels by bringing your focus to the present moment, where the ego cannot cling to past definitions or future projections. Ultimately, Freedom from the ego's labels comes when you realize that you are not your roles or achievements. You are the awareness behind them. This awareness is boundless, expansive, and free, waiting for you to embrace it. Section 7. The ego's fear of vulnerability. The ego dreads vulnerability because it equates it with weakness. From the ego's perspective, admitting fault, showing emotions, or asking for help are signs of inadequacy. It tells you that if you let others see your vulnerable side, they'll judge, reject, or exploit you. This fear keeps you locked in a fortress of emotional armor, afraid to let anyone truly see you. But here's the irony. Vulnerability is not weakness. It's a profound strength. When you allow yourself to be vulnerable, you open the door to genuine connection and understanding. Think back to a time when someone shared their struggles or fears with you. Chances are it made you feel closer to them. You didn't see their vulnerability as weakness. You saw it as courage. The ego doesn't understand this. It's obsessed with maintaining control and projecting an image of invincibility. This is why so many people hide behind masks, whether it's the mask of confidence, competence, or indifference. These masks may protect the ego, but they also isolate you from others. Over time, they lead to loneliness and disconnection, the very things the ego seeks to avoid. To break free from this fear, start by embracing small acts of vulnerability. Share a personal struggle with a trusted friend, or express your emotions honestly instead of suppressing them. Notice how liberating it feels to let go of the mask, even for a moment. Vulnerability fosters authenticity, which is the antidote to the ego's lies. Meditation can also help you confront the ego's fear of vulnerability. As you sit in silence, observe the ego's resistance to openness. Notice how it tries to protect itself with thoughts like, "Don't share that," or "You'll look weak." By simply observing these thoughts without judgment, you begin to see through the ego's illusion. True freedom lies in realizing that vulnerability is not something to fear, but something to embrace. It's the bridge that connects you to others and to your true self. When you let go of the ego's need for perfection, you discover the beauty of being human. Section 8. The ego's obsession with time. The ego cannot exist without time. It is either rooted in the past, rehashing old grievances and regrets, or projecting itself into the future, worrying about things that haven't happened yet. Rarely does the ego allow you to dwell in the present moment, the only place where life truly unfolds. Think about how much of your mental energy is spent on the past or future. Perhaps you replay a mistake from years ago, wishing you could go back and fix it. Or maybe you stress about an upcoming event, imagining worst-case scenarios that may never happen. This constant time travel drains your energy and robs you of the peace found in the now. The past is gone. It exists only in your memory. The future is not yet real. It exists only in your imagination. The present moment, however, is alive and vibrant, waiting for your attention. The ego resists this truth because it cannot survive in the present. In the now, there is no room for its stories, judgments, or fears. Mindfulness is a powerful practice for breaking free from the ego's time trap. By focusing on your breath, a sound, or a sensation, you anchor yourself in the present. Over time, this practice quiets the ego's chatter, allowing you to experience the stillness and clarity of the now. Another way to escape the ego's obsession with time is to cultivate gratitude. When you focus on what you're grateful for in the present moment, the ego's grip loosens. Gratitude shifts your perspective from lack to abundance, reminding you of the richness of the now. Ultimately, freedom from the ego's time trap comes when you realize that the present moment is all there ever is. By letting go of the past and future, you step into a state of timeless awareness, where the ego has no power. Section 9. How the ego creates division. The ego thrives on division. It constantly seeks to separate you from others through judgment, comparison, and us versus them thinking. Whether it's based on race, religion, politics, or personal preferences, the ego creates boundaries that reinforce its own sense of superiority. Consider how often the ego judges others. It might say, "They're wrong and I'm right," or "They're different from me, so they must be bad." These judgments create walls between you and others, preventing genuine connection. On a larger scale, the ego's divisions fuel prejudice, discrimination, and even conflict. But the truth is, these divisions are illusions. At our core, we are all connected. The differences the ego clings to, skin color, beliefs, or status, are superficial. When you look deeper, you'll see that we all share the same fears, hopes, and desires. Empathy is the key to dissolving the ego's divisions. Instead of judging others, try to understand their perspective. Meditation can also help you see beyond the ego's boundaries, revealing the unity that underlies all things. When you let go of the ego's need for separation, you open the door to compassion and connection. Thank you for watching. If this video resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more insights like this. Leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Remember, true freedom starts within. See you in the next video.